Shut your mouth. That was Jamie Raskin, standing, pointing directly at the Attorney General of the United States, his voice splitting the hearing room like an axe. And Pam Bondi, the woman who had walked in that morning like she owned every inch of Washington, sat frozen at the witness table, hand pressed against her face, tears she couldn't stop running down her cheek. It took exactly 23 minutes to expose a $10 billion cover-up, and by the end of it, she was already breaking on live television. Here's exactly what happened. Bondi arrived at the House Judiciary Committee that March morning radiating confidence. Expensive suit, composed smile. Her staff had prepped her for every angle, civil liberties questions, surveillance overreach, the standard Democratic attacks. But she hadn't been told about Raskin's folder, and that one folder was about to change everything. At the far end of the committee table, Raskin sat completely still. Yellow legal pad, pen moving slowly. He hadn't asked a single question through the first hour. Other members took their shots. Bondi deflected smoothly. And with every clean answer she gave, her shoulders relaxed a fraction more. That was the trap. Because Raskin wasn't waiting for his turn. He was waiting for her to feel safe. At 11:14 a.m., Chairman Nadler called on him. Raskin looked up from his legal pad for the first time. He reached into the folder in front of him, and he pulled out a single document. But it wasn't the document that broke her. Attorney General Bondi, he said, and his voice was almost quiet, almost gentle. I'm going to show you a Department of Justice internal memo, dated September 14th, 2024, signed by your office. He held it up, just long enough for every camera in the room to capture it. This memo instructs career federal prosecutors to, and I'm quoting your exact words, deprioritize active investigative actions on a $10 billion fraud case. He set it down. Can you explain to this committee what that means? The smile didn't disappear, but something behind it did. In the space of 1 second, the temperature behind Bondi's eyes dropped. Her jaw moved just slightly, as if she was running through responses in real time. Her right hand, resting flat on the table, curled inward at the fingers. Congressman, prosecutorial prioritization is a routine part of managing a large department's caseload. $10 billion. Raskin's voice cut straight through her sentence. Not loud, precise, like a scalpel, not a hammer. That was the largest active fraud case in your department in 2024, and your office ordered it deprioritized. Why? The reporters in the gallery stopped typing. Bondi reached for her water glass, took a slow sip, buying herself 3 seconds. I can assure this committee that every decision made by the Department of Justice is made on the merits, completely free from political. I didn't ask about political interference. Raskin was already reaching into the folder again. He produced a second document and laid it on the table in front of him, deliberately, without urgency, the way someone places a card when they know they've already won the hand. This is a wire transfer record, $847,000 sent from one of the shell companies under active federal investigation, November 3rd, 2023. He looked up. Does that account number mean anything to you, Attorney General? Because the answer to that question was already in the file. The color left Bondi's face. Not all at once. In slow, visible increments like water draining from a glass. She blinked twice rapidly. Her hand moved back toward the water glass, and then stopped. She seemed to forget it was there. I'm not in a position to authenticate documents presented without proper chain of... Authenticated by your own department's records office, February 28th, 2025. Raskin's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Congressional subpoena. So let me ask again, does that account number mean anything to you? 8 seconds of silence. A Republican committee member who had spent the morning defending Bondi suddenly found something very interesting to study in his own notes. Then Raskin stood up. He rose slowly, almost quietly. But in that silence, the movement was enormous. Attorney General Bondi. His voice had changed now and stripped down to something flat and precise and final. I want to be very clear. This $10 billion investigation was deprioritized by your office. The key witness was never interviewed. Critical subpoenas were never issued. The case file shows zero activity between September 2024 and January 2025. One beat. That is not case management. That is a cover-up. And the documents in front of me prove it. Bondi opened her mouth. Congressman, I categorically... And that's when he snapped. Shut your mouth. The room detonated. Raskin's voice came out of nowhere. A wall of sound that hit the chamber like a physical force. Three people in the gallery flinched visibly. A staffer's pen clattered to the floor. "I am not finished." He was leaning forward now, both hands flat on the desk, voice cutting through the stunned silence like a blade. "A $10 billion fraud case, buried, dead, 0 arrests. And you sit here and tell this committee it was routine prioritization?" He picked up the memo and held it in the air. "This is your signature, your office, your decision. Now you are going to explain to the American people, every single one of them watching right now, exactly why. Or I am going to assume the answer is sitting in these 4 other documents." He slapped the folder down on the desk. The crack of it echoed. "So explain it." The silence that followed lasted 11 seconds. Bondi's hand came up to her face. It was a small movement, almost involuntary, 2 fingers pressing against the side of her cheek. But the cameras caught it. Every camera in the room caught it. And what they saw, in ultra-high definition, broadcast live to millions of people, was the moment Pam Bondi's composure stopped being a performance and became something else entirely. Her eyes filled, not with anger, not with indignation, with the raw, unguarded recognition of a person who has just run completely out of road. Her chin trembled. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. But her eyes were already wet, and when she blinked, once, slowly, a single tear moved down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. She seemed not to notice it was there. "I will..." Her voice came out thin, stripped, nothing like the woman who had walked in that morning. She stopped, swallowed, started again. "I will provide this committee with a full written response to these questions." That was all she had left. Raskin sat back down. He straightened his papers slowly and methodically, like a man who had just finished building something and was checking his work. "I have 4 more documents," he said quietly. The fury was gone, replaced by something colder and more devastating. "I'm going to give you the opportunity to explain every one of them, because the American people deserve to understand exactly how a $10 billion fraud case disappears inside the United States Department of Justice." He looked directly at her, and they deserve to understand who needed it to disappear. By the time the gavel fell, 3 things had already happened. The clip of Raskin's eruption, "Shut your mouth," the folder slamming down Bondi's tears, was trending on every platform simultaneously. 2 senior DOJ officials had already called attorneys, and somewhere inside a building on Pennsylvania Avenue, a file marked inactive was suddenly, urgently, the most important document in Washington. But the hearing wasn't finished yet. Raskin still had 4 documents, and the worst one hadn't been shown yet. He laid them out one by one, methodically, with the patience of a man who understood that the slowest knife cuts deepest. The second document was an internal DOJ email chain. 17 messages between Bondi's chief of staff and senior FBI leadership, spanning 3 months in late 2024. The subject line of the original email: case timeline management, priority realignment. What followed was a paper trail of delay, meeting postponed, resources reallocated, subpoenas held pending review. Each message polite and bureaucratic on the surface. Each one, in context, another brick in a wall, being built around a $10 billion fraud. Bondi tried to respond to each one. Her voice kept losing ground. The third document was worse. It was a memo from career prosecutors, not political appointees, career federal lawyers who had spent years building the case, formally objecting to the deprioritization order. The memo was dated September 19, 2024, 5 days after Bondi's office had issued its directive. The prosecutors wrote in precise and careful language that they believed the decision would materially compromise the investigation and allow the primary targets additional time to restructure financial holdings. The memo had been received, logged, and filed. No response was ever sent. "These are your own prosecutors," Raskin said, his voice now fully controlled. No shouting needed. The documents were doing the work. "Experienced federal lawyers telling your office, in writing, that this decision was going to let the people responsible for a $10 billion fraud walk free." He looked at her. "And your office said nothing back to them. Not one word. Why?" Bondi's answer, something about the complexity of interagency coordination, lasted 40 seconds and said absolutely nothing. Her voice had taken on a quality that was almost difficult to listen to. The practiced fluency was completely gone. What remained was the sound of a person choosing words the way someone picks their way across ice, slowly, with no confidence in any of the ground beneath them. The fourth document landed like the last stone in an avalanche. Wire transfer records, not one, 17. The $847,000 Raskin had mentioned earlier was the smallest transaction in a series that totaled, across all 17 transfers, $340 million. Every transfer documented, every destination account traced, every transaction time-stamped between September 2022 and August 2024. The exact window during which the investigation had been quietly wound down and then frozen entirely. The paper trail didn't just suggest coordination, it proved it. Bondi stared at the document Raskin placed in front of her. She didn't speak for 7 seconds. When she finally did, her voice had dropped to something barely above a whisper. "I will need to review these materials with counsel before—" "You had 8 months," Raskin said quietly. "Your department had this case for 8 months before it went dark." He closed the folder. "That's enough time." Bondi was escorted out by her security detail, head down, saying nothing. At the exit, just before the door, she stopped, put her hand flat against the wall, stood there for 3 full seconds, as if she needed it to hold herself up. Raskin spoke to reporters in the hallway. He was brief. "No one is above accountability," he said. "Not a corporation, not a political benefactor, not the Attorney General of the United States. The documents don't lie, people do. The $10 billion had been hidden. For months inside a case file no one was supposed to open. It had been sitting there, waiting." Jamie Raskin opened it.